The next congressional election is a faraway thing for the rest of America, but Clatsop County residents will vote in about 6 weeks to nominate Democratic and Republican candidates to face off in a general election in January. All of this happened because Congressman David Wu resigned his seat in Congress. Today's show is part of a series for After Deadline. We're interviewing the leading candidates for the 1st Congressional District. Today we'll talk with Rob Cornilles of Tualatin, who won the Republican nomination for this position in the 2010 election. He will be on November's ballot. Welcome to After Deadline, Rob.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Rob, this special election is not about theoretical issues. Whoever wins this race will jump into a set of choices that we already can see the shape of. President Obama, for instance, has sent Congress a jobs bill that contains a number of components, includes infrastructure investment, some tax cuts, and more spending cuts to pay for all of that. What do you make of that? What would you do with that if you were in Congress right now?
I think the first thing we have to do is find areas of common ground and where we can agree. And I think there are a few things in the president's plan that are very workable. For example, something that comes out to me right away is he's encouraging activity to help returning veterans, find immediate work. And this is something that's always been important to me. These people who sacrificed so much, they and their families, in this job environment, they of all people need to be given some special attention and treatment, whether it be through training programs, assistance through programs to immediately get them back into the workforce, going from helmet to hard hat, and so that was very encouraging to me. Another one is when the president said that we have to pass the free trade agreements between Korea, Panama, and Colombia. And there seems to be a lot of bipartisan support for this, but it's still languishing around and not being ratified. And, of course, for Oregonians, especially those in the 1st District, this could mean thousands of jobs. We're in a great position here, especially on the North Coast. We're an export city, an export county. We have Portland in our district. We have so many opportunities to export our goods and services, but we need more markets opened up. So I would be very much in favor of that. Third, you talked about the infrastructure that the president proposed. In order for us to compete domestically, whether we're talking about other states or cities such as Denver and Austin and Salt Lake City, etc., we have to have reliable transportation services and thoroughfares. And this is a big issue in certain parts of this particular district right now, but there's no question that if we're going to compete, not only, as I said, domestically, but even internationally, in moving goods and services faster, more efficiently, more cost-effectively, infrastructure rehabilitation is absolutely necessary. I would add, one of the things that strikes me about the president's suggestion is that there are already funds that have been dedicated to infrastructure buildup, the highway fund that came out of the stimulus plan in 2009, that are still unexpended. And so there's some onerous regulation and some procedural matters that are in the way right now of that particular improvement.
If you just joined us, my guest is Rob Cornilles, a Republican candidate for the election in the race to fill the congressional seat left vacant by the resignation of David Wu. Rob, President Obama has more recently made a paramount issue of raising the tax rates of the wealthiest Americans. What do you think of that?
Well, about a year ago, less than a year ago, in fact, in December of 2010, he strongly urged Congress to extend what some people like to call the Bush tax cuts. And he said at the time that it was very important that we not raise taxes during the recession, and that this would provide some certainty for people who would invest in America and to hire again. So now here we are about 9 months later, and he's now suggesting a different tack to take. For me, Steve, the real issue is, how is the best way to regenerate the economy? Is it to tax more, or is it to open up more avenues for job creation, whereby we have more taxpayers in the system? I subscribe to the second line of thinking. And so I ask myself, especially as a small business owner myself in Washington County, what do I need to have from the federal government so that I have the assurance that this is a good time to hire? I need consistency in the tax code. And when I say consistency, I mean it's so complicated right now. It's so unpredictable. You need an army of lawyers and accountants to figure it out. And unless you're a mega corporation, you're not getting the help you need. You won't be be able to. So instead, you sit on your hands. And yet at the same time, certain corporations, whether it be GE, that are making billions of dollars in profits right now, it's totally unfair that they should be escaping without paying any taxes. So I think a fairness of the tax code, reducing rates, getting rid of these stupid little loopholes that people talk about, I totally am in agreement with that. It shouldn't be so complicated, and you shouldn't have to be a mega corporation to figure it out.
Now, someone, I don't remember which lawmaker it is, has a proposal to simplify the tax code. I don't know who that is, but I know Senator Wyden had a bill for a while. It's been years since his was...
Well, once again, I'm sensing, and what I'm reading and hearing is that this is something that has bipartisan support. But what we don't have in Congress are people who are actually willing to take words and put it into action. Actually sit down at a table like you and I are doing right now and reach across and say, you know what, let's find areas of agreement. We may differ in policy or in practice, but in principle, we're all on the same page. And that is we need simplification. And we need people who would be willing to go back to Congress, and I put myself in this group, who know how to work, who know how to build consensus. We may not agree on every issue, but right now, the divisiveness that is going on in Congress right now, it's making this job creation platform extremely untenable and difficult for those who could do it.
If you've just joined me, Rob, my guest is Rob Cornilles, Republican candidate for election in the race to fill the seat left vacant by Congressman David Wu. Moving along on recent congressional events, not that long ago, Congress and the president went down to the wire in approving an increase in the federal debt ceiling. To some Americans, that tension was unsettling, and it unsettled the markets. What do you think was right or wrong with how the debt ceiling negotiations went down?
First, I would totally agree that the manner in which it happened was disgusting. It was frustrating for Americans, and frankly, there's a lot of anger about it, and there should be. It's very sad commentary on our government right now, where we expect to send these representatives back to Congress to act as adults, and instead they play games. And we, back in Oregon's 1st District, certainly here in the North Counties, I think we suffer as a result. So as it relates to the issue itself, America does not renege on its debts. If people invest in America, they need to be paid. And they need to be paid back the debts that we incur. There's no question about that. So I would have voted to raise the debt ceiling, as was done. However, the question is, why do we have to raise the debt ceiling? Why did we have to do that? It's because we continued to borrow money we don't have, and that is what I'm opposed to. We shouldn't get to that point, Steve, as you know, when we each year, in fact, sometimes multiple times it seems a year, we're asking ourselves, how much more can we borrow? The fact is, we as Americans have certain services that we want the government to provide, whether it be health care for our seniors through Medicare, Social Security payments, etc. Certainly funding retirement for our military and others. But there are also things that require some very adult thinking. And the Bowles-Simpson report that came out a year ago is something that I think needs to be acted upon, and it hasn't been. So the debt ceiling was just, to me, the epitome of what's wrong in Washington today.
You're the first person in quite a while who's brought up Bowles-Simpson. So you like that one? You like that concept?
Yes, I do. I think
for the listener, that was the commission that was put in business to deal with the debt.
And here's what's ironic about it. The president commissioned that committee in, I think it was the spring of 2010, and gave them 8 or 9 months to come back with a deficit reduction plan. And they did. It was a bipartisan committee made up of current and former members and other government leaders. And they came back with something they said, that they even admitted, this is not perfect. There's a lot of disagreement about it within our committee, but all told, we believe this is the right and fair approach to take. And we were waiting on pins and needles last year to see what their commission report would entail. And here we are a year later, and the president hasn't enacted anything from it. And what have we done instead? We formed another committee, a 12-person super committee that's supposed to report back by Thanksgiving. Why do we stop meeting? Why don't we take action? This is why I think the people in the 1st District are ready for someone new in Congress.
Your party's presidential race, the Republican Party, of course, is especially exciting with some vivid contrasts, especially between Mitt Romney and Rick Perry. Governor Perry of Texas has taken some pretty hard shots at Social Security. calling it a monstrous lie, for instance. Do you accept Governor Perry's characterization of Social Security?
Well, I frankly am not too involved in the presidential election. I don't follow it as closely as I'm following the events of the first district. I think that everyone would agree that Social Security needs to be fixed so that it's a reliable source of retirement for our seniors and our people who are disadvantaged. And again, this is an area of bipartisan agreement. The problem is they talk about it, but they won't do anything about it. And I refer again to the Bowles-Simpson report. It had some great suggestions, and some, if we got down into the weeds on it, some I would say that's good. Some I would say, I don't know about that. We need to study it further. But I think everyone agrees, including the president, Social Security can be fixed. There isn't a lot of maneuvering that needs to be done. There's just some common agreement we need to come to.
Well, I bring up what Governor Perry said because, of course, it is the Republican Party primary. It'll eventually get to Oregon, of course. And it resonates apparently with some Republicans, what he said, but not with all.
That's probably true. I think what really resonates for all Republicans and Democrats right now is that we expect our leaders to lead. We expect them to stop pointing fingers. We expect them once and for all to stop the name calling and just act on our behalf. And we're not seeing that. And we haven't seen it in both parties, Steve. The Republicans have been remiss. The Democrats have dropped the ball on these issues. And I just think if we elect more of the same, especially in this special election that I'm running for, if we elect people who are just kind of come from that same mold of being groomed to run for office someday, we're going to get the same results, and we can't afford that in the first district anymore.
Healthcare is inevitably part of both the presidential and the congressional campaign. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney takes heat in debates for having moved a healthcare reform package in Massachusetts. To start this topic off, does Romney's involvement with healthcare bother you?
I think that as a governor, looking over the needs of his particular state, from what I know, he did the best that he could. He made the best decision that he could at that time to benefit his state. And certainly there are people in Massachusetts who are benefiting from that. I think where the differences come is whether or not the federal government should mandate how states operate or execute health care and coverage. And that is something that I think should be argued because, for me, it's a state's issue. If I don't believe, and we'll see, of course, how all these judicial decisions come down as to whether the constitutionality of a mandate is tenable. But I think that for me, it comes down to, once again, giving the states the opportunity to make the decision as to what best fits their population, their needs, their culture, their value system, etc. And if Massachusetts wants to do it a different way than Oregon or Texas or whomever, that's their prerogative. That's their constitutional prerogative.
Assuming that we have a Republican Congress and Senate, which we may well, there will undoubtedly be a proposal to repeal the package that President Obama moved. How would you vote on that? Well,
of course, if it's ruled unconstitutional, then everything is unraveled, and it really doesn't matter what Congress is going to do.
But let's say it wasn't. It's sitting in front of you, and the gavel has said 15 minutes to 20 minutes to vote.
Sure. Last year when I was running for Congress, I took a lot of heat from my party, and the reason was I would not say that I would go back to Congress in 2011, should I have been elected, and repeal Obamacare, as they called it. And the reason why is because I felt that it would be a wasted exercise to try to repeal something that the president would never approve of. And we could talk more about why I felt that the repeal would be a wasted exercise and what we should have been doing during these critical months to improve health care coverage and costs in our country.
When we come back from our break, we'll talk about liquefied natural gas. We're back with Rob Cornilles, the Republican candidate who wants to fill the congressional seat that was left vacant by David Wu. Turning more to this county, Rob, Senator Ron Wyden has a proposal that would give the states a role in siting liquefied natural gas pipelines. That's a big issue in Clatsop County, where as many as 2 LNG terminals have been proposed. Would you support Senator Wyden's bill?
As much as I understand it, yes, I would. I haven't frankly gotten into all of the details of it, but the reason I support it in principle is that I think that, as you know, I was for LNG last year, and the reason for it is because I think it's a local issue, and if the local community feels that this is what they need for job creation, if this is what they need to transport new energy affordably and safely, then I would certainly want to be supportive of that. But I think the other reason that's very important that I point out that I'm for it is because states need to be making these decisions. States need to have the right to decide how their lands are used, how their resources are used, as long as, of course, they follow federal guidelines. And as I understand the bill, that's what this would provide.
If you win this race, you will walk into one of the most bitterly partisan Congresses. The Portland pollster Tim Hibbett says it's this way because House districts have been drawn to isolate the purest concentrations of Democratic and Republican voters. Thus, says Hibbett, the liberal and conservative extremes are in the House, but few moderates. Where would you fit in that mixture?
Well, I've never been one to label others or even myself, but I will tell you I'm my own man. Nobody asked me to run for Congress. When I say nobody, I'm speaking about the people back in Washington. Certainly my friends and those who know me well have encouraged me and asked me to get involved in public policy such as this. But I'm going back not because I want to be on anyone's good side and not because I'm looking to have a career in Congress. Quite frankly, I have a great career in the small business that I formed 16 years ago with my wife and with the many employees we've had over those years. I like the work that I do, but I think this is a time where people have to step away from that which is comfortable and that which perhaps they were planning on doing and do something a little bigger than themselves. And for me, that's getting involved in public policy and trying to serve my community.
In the Republican Party these days, there are really essentially 3 camps. There are economic conservatives, there's social conservatives, and national security conservatives. Which of those blocks do you fit into?
I think it's fair to say that what prompted me to run for Congress is the economic situation we're in today. That's what got me off the proverbial couch. And the concern that I have for not only my neighbors and my immediate family, but I look at my kids. I have 3 sons, ages 21, 18, and 15. And I'm concerned, quite frankly, about their ability and their own family's ability to achieve prosperity in Oregon when they get to that age. I'm concerned that more and more kids have to leave the state to find a good job or a sustainable career. I don't like it when we have our seniors who have to go visit their kids or their kids come here to visit instead of actually being able to live close to them because there's opportunity in this state. So the fact that we are continuously above the national average in unemployment as a state, 15 straight years, that's something that to me is shameful, and it should not be that way when you consider all the wonderful natural and human resources we have in the 1st District. And we need a champion and an advocate in Washington who will prop us up and give us opportunity that we haven't had. We're the only district out of 435 in the entire country that doesn't have a voice in Congress today. And I think that's a very sad commentary.
You're the one prominent candidate in either party in the special election who's not served in a legislature. Tell us about your background and how it believes it equips you to serve in Congress.
Well, as I said, I started a small business 16 years ago, and I grew it out of a spare bedroom in my home, and I dipped into our savings account so that we could afford to run a business and hire people. And not all at the same time, mind you, but we have had 60 employees during the life of our business. And I consider those 60 families that we've brought in and that we have to be responsible for. I've met a payroll 192 straight months with those employees. And I've learned learned how to say no when things are tough. I've learned how to put my own paycheck in the desk drawer when it wouldn't be responsible to pay myself. And also I've been very involved in my community. I'm on the board of the Oregon Special Olympics. I'm on the board for the Oregon League of Minority Voters. I'm on the board for Virginia Garcia Memorial Foundation, which is a set of community health centers located in Washington and Yamhill counties, which provides health care for our neighbors who either have little income or no income. And I'm very proud of my association with that organization.
Tell us about your business.
You bet. GameFace is a consultancy and a training organization. We do two things. We help companies primarily in the sports industry, but not exclusively. We work even with local manufacturing and retail and professional service companies here in Oregon. But we're known most for our work in the sports industry. So we have about 400 professional and minor league and intercollegiate sports teams that come all the way to 12th in Oregon to get advice on how to run a more efficient, a more successful enterprise, how to take care of their fans, their customers, more effectively. And we also have assisted more than 500 individuals secure full-time jobs in our industry through placement services and training services that we offer. So I'm a proven job creator, not only for my own business, but also for my clients' business.
How did you germinate the idea for this business?
Well, years ago, I don't know if I want to admit this, but here we go. Years ago, I used to work for the Los Angeles Clippers basketball team. And contrary to what it may appear, Steve, I was not a power forward, but rather I was an executive working in that organization. And my job was to bring fans into the building, and not just one game, but consistently, game after game. Now, how do you do that when your team is lousy? Well, you take care of people, and you give them positive results from that experience. And we did that, and that led to an opportunity for me to share my concepts, my ideas and methods with other teams around the sports industry. And after a few years of doing that, I finally figured, hey, there's a business here. And so my wife, Allison, and I decided to move back to Portland and start this company, even though, quite frankly, it doesn't belong in Portland with only 1% of our clientele here. But we love the area. We love the First District. We love Northwest Oregon, and this is where we wanted to raise our family.
That happens here, as Eric Paulson would tell you, Electro doesn't have to be here.
That's
it really
right.
Shouldn't be here.
Well, Eric said that same thing to me just last night. We had a gathering in his home with a lot of people from the North Counties, and he made that very clear. But he and I stay because of our fondness for the people here, the environment here. We want to leave it a little better than we found it.
In the 2010 election, when you ran against Congressman Wu, you got to 42%, but couldn't move beyond that. What will be different in this election for you?
Well, I think one thing that will be different is that the voters have only one election to consider this time. And quite frankly, as a new candidate last time with not a lot of name familiarity, because I've been spending so much of my professional career in other cities, I had a hard time breaking through the clutter, if you will. And now Oregon has a very unique opportunity to focus just on one particular race for the next 4.5 months. And I would add, this is the only special election in the entire country until the end of January, which gives us a very unprecedented opportunity to bring attention to what we need here in Oregon. And I think the eyes of the world are going to be watching. It happens to also be the first election of 2012. So I think there's some symbolism here, and Oregon can send the right message.
The word was, as we say, what people in the news business heard was that the national Republicans in the last election in 2010 didn't lay a lot of money on you. Is that going to change this time?
I really don't know. I haven't had any communications with them about that. I'm really running my own race, and I love that. It's not only an opportunity for Oregon, it's an opportunity for me to show the voters here who I am. And I also think that it's a unique opportunity for people to get involved in what's happening locally. Like I say, there's going to be a lot of attention on this race.
Where is your donor base? Is it Oregon-based or is it more national?
Oh, it's absolutely Oregon-based. I think last time my opponent had quite the discrepancy from my donors as far as where they were coming from around the country. My support is right here in Oregon. It's people who know me. It's people who are getting to know me. And it comes far and wide. I would add that we already have 17 mayors in the 1st Congressional District who have stepped forward and endorsed me And this is a bipartisan list. And I haven't even won the nomination yet. So I'm very excited about that. And I think it reflects the fact that these mayors who know their communities best see me as someone who will listen, who understands the difficulty right now in economic revitalization and in job creation, and someone who will work tirelessly to help them in this area. And that's why they want to support my candidacy.
What does it take to run for a seat in Congress these days? How much money?
Hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds, yeah. Hundreds of thousands.
No, it will take a lot of money, certainly.
Yeah. What is the price tag these days? I mean, I used to know this stuff, but I think it's a dynamic number. It will be changing, but it will be an expensive race for both parties and for both candidates. There's no question about it. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can certainly check the last year. Most congressional races were over $1 million last year in this state.
Yeah.
So I think that's at least the benchmark that one has to hit to be successful.
Yeah. How much have you raised at this point?
We're going to be announcing that in a couple of weeks, Steve, and I'll make sure that you get notice of that.
Okay. That's the next deadline, obviously, with the FEC.
That's right.
Yeah. The first congressional district that we're in includes Portland, suburban Washington County, Columbia County, and Clatsop County, where Clatsop is a lot different than those other counties. And where does it fit in that mix, in your mind?
Well, for me, Clatsop and the North counties in general, Columbia and Clatsop, have been largely ignored by congressional representation here in the 1st District. And I've pledged that if the voters will put me in office, I will have a congressional office in Clatsop County, because I think it's very important that I, as their congressman, am constantly kept abreast of what's going on here. We have so many assets in Clatsop County. We're a port city. We have wonderful fisheries. We've got innovators here. We have small manufacturing. We have the reliable Coast Guard housed here, one of our largest employers. They need to know, the voters need to know that their congressman is aware of not only what they're doing well, but also where they need assistance, where they need representation and an ear. And I will be that ear. And I'm excited for that presence that we'll have here in the future.
I want to come back to the healthcare question we had before our halfway through break, and have you continue on that train of thought. You were talking essentially about why repeal wasn't the point. The point was to
fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pragmatic person, and I look at the numbers. And if I would have gone back to Congress this year as a Republican, which of course I am and proud to be, even though the Republicans did spend time repealing health care this year in the House, the Senate didn't even take it up for consideration. If the Senate would have, they would have not passed it. And if they would have passed it, it would have gone to a president's desk who would have vetoed it. So for me, it was, again, cosmetic. And that doesn't do anything. That doesn't accomplish anything.
It wins debating points for the next election. That's what
exactly.
It's about. Yeah.
And I would have preferred, and I said this last year when I was running, there's no way that it can be repealed in 2011, so let's spend these critical months fixing the problem. Let's find ways to lower the cost. Let's find ways to make sure that more people have access to it, but not do it through mandates that are unaffordable and unpredictable for small businesses. These are some of the things that need to be addressed immediately, because the small businesses and their employees are hurting because the cost of healthcare continues to rise.
We spent the last half hour speaking with Rob Cornilles, who is a leading Republican candidate for the seat left vacant by Congressman David Wu. Thanks for being with us, Rob.
It's a pleasure, Steve. Thank you.